This is not just an archaeological site, it is a crime scene that has been covered up for 12,000 years.
Beneath the dry soil of Anatolia lies a massive, impossible secret that destroys the timeline of human history. 6,000 years before the very first stone of Stonehenge was ever dragged into place by primitive Britons, 7,000 years before the Great Pyramids rose above the sands to flatter the egos of Egyptian pharaohs, there was already a complex, terrified civilization moving massive limestone pillars with their bare hands. Stones weighing up to 20 tons were arranged in absolutely perfect geometric circles that rival modern engineering. This site is called Göbekli Tepe, and according to every history book you own, it simply should not exist. Mainstream archaeologists have insisted for decades that our ancestors were just simple, brainless hunter-gatherers. They claim we had no metal tools, no pottery, and absolutely zero knowledge of how to farm the land. Yet these primitives carved sophisticated three-dimensional predators into the hardest rock on Earth. This discovery is the smoking gun that proves we have forgotten a massive chapter of our ancient past. Because the most disturbing part of this story is not actually how this impossible temple was built. The true mystery is why it was carefully, deliberately, and completely buried by the very people who built it. Someone clearly wanted to hide this knowledge from the future world, or perhaps save it for us to find. Welcome to Ancient Scan. Today, we dig up the warning that was left for us in the stone. In 1994, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt walked away from a safe career to chase a ghost. He investigated a hill known as Potbelly Hill, a place the locals avoided and called the Hill of Broken Graves. Previous surveys had dismissed the site as a medieval cemetery of no real importance, a bureaucratic mistake. But Schmidt saw something in the dirt that others had missed. The ground was bleeding with sharp flint. There were no signs of houses, no trash pits, and absolutely zero water sources for miles around this hill. This was not a place where people lived. This was a place where people came to work, worship, and panic. As his team began to dig, the first T-shaped pillar emerged from the deep sediment like a rising giant. It was perfectly preserved, protected by the very soil that had hidden it away from the eroding wind. On the side of the pillar, strange spindly arms were carved in low relief, hugging the stone itself. Hands with long fingers meeting above a belt, covering a loincloth made of the skin of a fox. The carbon dating results came back, and the scientific community went completely silent in shock. 12,000 years old, the end of the last ice age, a time of absolute biting cold. This date makes Göbekli Tepe twice as old as the recorded history of Sumeria and the invention of writing. It forces us to ask a question that makes many traditional historians sweat in their comfortable chairs. How did scattered nomads organize a workforce of hundreds without a king, money, or written language? Who fed them when agriculture had supposedly not been invented yet and hunting was unreliable? The answers found in the DNA of the local wheat are even more strange than the stones themselves. Geneticists discovered that every stalk of wheat we eat today traces its ancestry back to this exact spot. The cradle of agriculture is located exactly 20 miles from this temple, suggesting a terrifying conclusion. Did the temple create the farm, or did the farm create the temple? The evidence points to the former. Göbekli Tepe proves that the urge to connect with the divine, or the fearful, came before civilization itself. But what were they connecting with, and why does the art here look less like worship and more like a warning? The art of Göbekli Tepe is not a celebration of life, fertility, or the beauty of the natural world. There are no happy scenes of farming, no mothers with children, no families holding hands by the fire. Instead, the stones are covered with a menagerie of lethal predators ready to kill.
Scorpions with raised tails, spiders ready to bite, and venomous snakes weaving through the stone. This was not a Garden of Eden. This was a gallery of primal fear and imminent death. Pillar 43 is the most famous and the most terrifying puzzle piece of the entire complex. It depicts a massive vulture holding a circular object on its open wing, like a sun or a comet. Below the bird, there is a headless human body, limp, lifeless, and stripped of identity. This is the first evidence of a sky burial, a dark ritual where the dead are fed to the birds. Bodies were left out in the open air for the great birds to consume, stripping the flesh from the bone. The soul was believed to be carried up into the sky inside the bird, returning to the stars. But the ritual did not end when the flesh was gone. The bones were treated with bizarre precision.
Archaeologists found human skull fragments with deep, straight grooves carved by flint tools. Someone used a sharp tool to carve lines into the bone long after the person had died. A hole was drilled into the top, likely to hang the skull on a rope as a macabre decoration. Imagine walking into this enclosure at night, lit only by flickering, smoky fire. Skulls of ancestors hanging from the T-shaped pillars, watching you with empty eyes. The floors are watertight, polished terrazzo made of burnt lime, smoother than many modern floors. Scientists analyzed the residue in the stone basins and found traces of oxalate, a byproduct of beer. Huge vats of alcohol, enough to intoxicate hundreds of people at once, were consumed here. This was a place of altered states, of hallucinations, where reality blurred with the spirit world. The pillars are arranged to create a specific acoustic environment that amplifies low frequencies. A steady drumbeat here would resonate in the chest, inducing a hypnotic trance state. It was a theater of the macabre, designed to force people to confront the inevitable reality of death. But why build such a complex machine just to worship the dead? There must be a practical reason. Perhaps they were not worshiping death, but trying to control it or predict when it would return. The orientation of the pillars suggests they were watching the sky with obsessive precision. They were tracking a cycle of destruction that they had seen before and feared would happen again. And this brings us to the theory that ties the stones to a global apocalypse, the Younger Dryas. To understand the fear carved into these stones, we must first look at the climate data from the ice. 12,800 years ago, the warming world suddenly snapped back into a deep freeze. Temperatures on the planet plummeted violently in just a few short years, wiping out food sources. Geologists call this period the Younger Dryas, a sudden, inexplicable return to the Ice Age conditions. For decades, this freeze was a mystery until we found the microscopic diamonds hidden in the soil. Nanodiamonds are only formed by cosmic impacts or nuclear explosions. There is no other way. A fragmented comet likely slammed into the North American ice sheet, vaporizing the ice instantly. The impact did not just freeze the world, it set the sky on fire first, creating a global firestorm.
This was a global cataclysm that wiped out the megafauna and nearly ended the human race completely. Now, return to Pillar 43 with this apocalypse in mind, and the code begins to break. Researchers realize the animals are not just animals, they are constellations in the night sky. The scorpion is Scorpio, the bull is Taurus, and the vulture represents the constellation Cygnus. It is a stamp of the sky, a specific date frozen in stone forever, waiting to be read. When astronomers wound back the night sky to 10,900 BC on their computers, the position of the stars matched the carvings on the pillar perfectly, almost like a photograph. The circle on the vulture's wing sits exactly where the sun was located at that precise moment. This is not a temple, it is a memorial to the day the world burned and the sky fell. The survivors of the impact gathered here to leave a desperate message for the future.
They were not building a church, they were building a black box for humanity, a warning that the sky is not a god, but a loaded gun pointing directly at Earth. This explains why they buried the site with such extreme care and effort. They did not want the message to be eroded by the wind, rain, or the passage of time. They sealed it in a time capsule, waiting for a civilization smart enough to decode it. Before we continue, if you want us to investigate the Younger Dryas Impact in depth, hit the like button now. But there is another layer to this mystery that is even stranger than the star maps. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed something massive under the main floors we see today. The site is not just circles, it is a stack of temples built on top of temples. But here's the twist. As centuries passed, the builders became worse at masonry, not better. The oldest layers are the most advanced, while the newest layers are the most primitive. This is the reverse of evolution. This is a civilization forgetting itself in real time. They started with genius engineering and slowly lost the knowledge as the trauma took hold. It is the terrifying signature of a post-apocalyptic society dying out and forgetting its past. We used to believe these enclosures were built randomly by tribes wandering in the dark. But in 2020, an algorithmic study by Tel Aviv University changed everything we thought we knew. When computers analyzed the center points of the 3 oldest stone circles, a pattern emerged. They discovered a hidden geometric pattern that is completely invisible to the naked human eye. The centers form a nearly perfect equilateral triangle with incredible, impossible precision. This shape is not a coincidence. It means the entire complex was planned as a single unit. These hunter-gatherers understood complex geometry thousands of years before Pythagoras was even born. But the mystery goes beyond triangles. Pause the video and look closely at the top of Pillar 43. There are 3 carved objects that look exactly like modern luxury handbags. Archaeologists call them weights, but they appear in impossible places all over the ancient world. Travel forward thousands of years to ancient Sumeria, the land of the first kings and gods. The gods are depicted holding this exact same handbag in their right hands, carrying knowledge. Now cross the Atlantic Ocean to the jungles of Mexico in the mysterious Olmec culture. The founding fathers of Central America hold the same bag in their stone art. 3 civilizations, separated by oceans and millennia, sharing one specific icon. Skeptics call this coincidence, but the ancients had a very different story about the 7 sages. These travelers were said to be survivors of a great flood who carried the seeds of civilization. Is Göbekli Tepe the first school built by these survivors of the lost world? If so, the carvings are not just art, they are a library of rescued knowledge meant for us. But there is one final piece of evidence that makes this theory truly chilling. It is found inside the skulls of the builders themselves. The people buried here had a genetic anomaly in their teeth that links them to a specific bloodline. They were not just locals, they were a mix of people who traveled far to be here. Why would people travel thousands of miles on foot to build a hill in a desert wasteland, unless it was the only place left on Earth that held the secret to survival? And just as suddenly as they arrived, they decided to bury it all and vanish. They knew something was coming, or perhaps they knew that we would need to find it later. We think we have seen the face of Göbekli Tepe, but we are only looking at a mask. After 3 decades of intense digging, less than 5% of the site has been uncovered. Ground-penetrating radar sweeps reveal at least 20 more circles deep underground, waiting. Official reports cite preservation, but others whisper that the findings are too risky for history. If the deeper layers prove civilization is older, every history book becomes fiction instantly. Göbekli Tepe was not built by a confident society, it was built by a people traumatized by fear. They realized nature could kill them instantly, so they invented gods to negotiate for their lives. We are the children of that trauma, still building tall towers to keep the dark away. But the stones of Göbekli Tepe have one last secret left to whisper to us today.
The cycle of destruction that they tracked is not a line, it is a circle, and it is closing. Göbekli Tepe forces us to look in the mirror and see a ghost behind our own shoulder. If civilization is a fragile dream, then Göbekli Tepe is the alarm clock ringing. Wake up. When the next impact comes, we will leave behind only plastic and rust, dust in the wind. This is why they buried it, not to hide it from us, but to save it for us. The real question is not who built Göbekli Tepe, it is who will build the next one. This channel exists to find the fragments of truth that the establishment ignores. If you believe history is more than what they tell you, you need to join us right now. Click subscribe to become part of the excavation. Do not let the truth remain buried. And tell me in the comments, are we the masters of this planet or just the next fossil?
I will see you in the next investigation. This is Ancient Scan. Keep digging.